What's up, Strength Faction? Pete Dupuis coming back to you with the third week of Fitness Business Insights for this fall 2017 period. We are coming out of a week where we previously did one of our live business Q&As, and one of the topics of discussion was hosting charity events for the purpose of lead generation. And we got in depth with a lot of that discussion, and I know that a number of you were not able to attend, and I thought there was a lot of value in that conversation. So I figured this week we would take a little bit of a deeper dive into that conversation, and I'd outline what are effectively my 5 rules for hosting these events and driving business and raising money for the good cause that we choose during each given period, and go from there. So there are 5 simple rules. None of them are necessarily mandated, but they've worked for us in the past as we've been hosting these events pretty consistently for the last 5 to 6 years. And the first of these rules is specifically that there is such a thing as too many events. And I know it's easy to get excited about bringing a bunch of new bodies to the gym, but hosting these events, you're going to find that over time you have a lot of the same exact audience with each visit, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They show up with a good attitude, they show up with money in hand for the right cause. Often they bring friends. But when you have the same audience in your small community that you live in coming to each of these, you can begin to take advantage of their attention. And it's kind of like using a newsletter list. You don't want to mail on your newsletter list with a new affiliate program 2-3 times a week and constantly ask them to buy. Just like that with charity events, you don't want to ask people to show up every 2 to 3 weeks, because eventually they're going to get overwhelmed by the options and they're going to stop showing up. So the rule we work off of here at CSP in Massachusetts is typically every 8 weeks. Sometimes we'll push that down into the 6-week window if it's timing, we'll say calendar specific, because maybe we have a cause that's really imperative that it happen in relation to a holiday or something of that nature. But honestly, we target 6 charity events a year for raising money and awareness for the business. So rule number 1, there is such a thing as too many events. The second rule is that I encourage you to try to standardize your calendar, because there are a number of causes that fall into very specific segments of the year, and if you can get on the wave of what's being discussed in social media, great example being October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's our biggest event of the year. We raise far and away the most money and put the most bodies in the room for an event that happens during effectively the same weekend each year, supporting the same cause. And a lot of that is because it's top of mind awareness for a lot of people, and being consistent with who you support and when can increase the consistency of your foot traffic. So we'll do a local one here in the next couple of weeks. Then we will transition to our annual Toys for Tots event as we get close to the holidays, and we're going to keep sticking to that 8-week window. Third rule, when it comes to selecting a cause that you're going to support, I am very much of the mentality that smaller is always better. So let me give you an example. A couple years ago, I believe it was 3 years ago, we chose Susan G. Komen for raising funds for breast cancer awareness during the month of October. And it's a great cause. It's a humongous event or charity. They drive I guess they probably drive millions of dollars through their donations every single year. They've got their organized walks, they've got causes all over the place, and plenty of people donate to them. And that was our charity of choice. And we raised a good deal of money for a small gym to donate to them, and we were pretty excited about it. But what we learned during that process was that in the grand scheme of things, we are barely a drop in the bucket to Susan G. Komen. And as much as they appreciated our dollars being delivered to them, they didn't really care to allocate any resources to helping us with the process. So when we had one of our strength campers approach us and ask if we would consider supporting a breast cancer specific cause that she was in line with, we decided to do so, and that was a local fund called the Virginia Thurston Healing Garden, which is a place where people who are fighting a variety of forms of cancer, but specifically breast cancer in this case, it's kind of a haven for them where they recover and have a support system. And we said, sure, it's important to you, let's do it. And so what we came to learn was that not only was the strength camper who was emotionally attached to the process very involved in driving leads for us, but the people at the Virginia Thurston Healing Garden really went to bat for driving attention to our event. And they mailed on their newsletter, they used all their social platforms, they got their entire team, all of their employees and volunteers at our event, and we effectively tripled our best foot traffic ever for a charity event, and we 5x'd the money we raised. And we realized that smaller is better. Local is better in this case because people are a lot more emotionally attached to it, and you're not worried about a massive organization like Susan G. Komen concerning themselves with you. So rule number 3, smaller is always better. The fourth rule I want to give you is possibly the most important one, and that is that you have to designate somebody to collect info from every attendee during these events. Because people are there, they want to give their $5, $10, or $20, get their training session in, leave feeling good, and they're not that psyched about being sold. So we don't sell real hard on generating leads for the event at these, or for future strength campers. But we do collect as much information as people are willing to part with. So a name, a phone number, an email address, and we tell them we're not going to hit you with heavy sales pitches. We're going to send you some pictures of the event that we took while we were here, and we're going to announce the winners of a raffle that we're doing. We typically give away a pair of New Balance sneakers during these events, and the only way for people to get their name on that list is to provide a current email address. And we have that email address to add them to our Strength Camp newsletter, which goes out on the first Wednesday of each month, to eventually solicit some business from them and attempt to get them to consider coming in for a trial month, and to mail on them for any future charity events that we're hosting. And we'll tell them, even if this isn't a fit for you as far as being a paying client in the long term, we would love to have you at every charity event we do and help with the environment and the cause. And if you're going to collect that information, it's very difficult to do on the day of the event if you're also coaching it, because there's a certain level of chaos that comes with people all piling through the door at once and everybody being in a good mood and being ready to get started. But it's very difficult to get this info on paper. So we typically assign an intern to do so, sometimes 2 depending on the size of the crowd, and they move around the room, they collect as much as they can, and we go from there. But if you choose not to collect it and you kind of ride by the seat of your pants at these events, you're going to end up with a cool experience, a bunch of good photos, and probably not any leads because people get out even faster than they came in. The 5th rule. This is an important one to me. I'm a big believer of the law of repeated exposures. So I encourage you not to get down on the process with charity events if you don't generate business out of the first one or even the second one, because you need to remember that what you're doing is creating brand awareness. Awareness for your fitness business, awareness for your team. You're creating conversation in the community about what you're doing. And some people will tell you that it's the law of 7. Some people might need to experience advertisements, training with you, recommendations from their friends up to 7 times before they say, all right, I relent, I'm in. So don't be so hard on yourself if you don't get a ton of business out of your first go at this. You got to just repeat that exposure again and again and again, and eventually someone's going to come in, they're going to say, you know what, I've heard about you guys so many times, I've been to enough events, it's time for me to pull the trigger and try a trial month. So don't get down, repeat that exposure. That's it for this week. Our 5 rules to recap. There is such a thing as too many events. I encourage you to standardize your calendar. Smaller is better when it comes to selecting the charity that you raise money for. Collecting contact info from every attendee is imperative. And then the 5th and final one is don't get down if you don't generate a ton of business. You got to keep hitting people with introductions to your business. Next week, we're going to return with a live Q&A. We're going to do it midday on Thursday, as we have in the past, and we will again solicit a survey type style collection of potential discussion topics, but we go in any direction you want on those conversations. See all of you then.